The sky was a soft, hazy gold as Mike stepped out of the old antique shop, his two sons trailing behind him. Mike was a tall, broad-shouldered man, his warm brown eyes filled with a quiet strength, and his dark hair was pulled back neatly. He wore a simple shirt and jeans, but carried an air of gentle authority. His eldest son, Mason, who was 13 and already nearly as tall as his father, flicked his dark brown hair out of his eyes. Mason's mixed heritage was clear in his tan skin and thoughtful eyes, which were currently fixed on the strange old video game case he held. A happy, curious smile played on his lips. Beside him, 10-year-old Swade clutched the box with both hands. He was a vibrant boy with tan skin and sparkling brown eyes that glittered with pure excitement. A cheeky smile was perpetually on his face as he looked at their prize, his simple shirt and shorts doing little to contain his boundless energy. None of them had meant to buy anything. They'd only wandered into the dusty, forgotten antique shop because something inside seemed to call to them, a strange pull they couldn't explain, and then all three of them saw it at the same moment, sitting on a velvet cloth. Strangely free of dust, it was the Game of 24. A small, stark warning was printed beneath the title, "Play at your own risk." It didn't look old and forgotten like everything else in the store. In fact, it almost seemed to glow with an inner light. "Mean, let's take it," Mason said immediately, his voice filled with teenage certainty. Mike raised a questioning eyebrow. "We don't even know what kind of game it is. What system does it even run on?" But even he felt it, that inexplicable, magnetic feeling drawing them toward the box. It was a low hum, a vibration in the air that seemed to whisper their names. Swade grinned up at him, his cheeky smile widening. "Come on, Dad, it's like it wants us to play." And so, against all logic, they bought it. Level 0, the beginning. Back home, they crowded around the old console connected to the TV, Mike settling on the couch in the middle with a protective arm around each of his boys. The game loaded with a slow, grinding hum, the screen filling with swirling neon symbols, floating digital clocks, and shifting ethereal puzzle pieces. "It looks old," Mason commented, leaning forward. "You mean it looks cool," Swade corrected, with his eyes glued to the screen. Then 2 words pulsed into existence. They read, "Start game." Mike looked at his sons, saw their eager faces, and with a shared nod, he clicked the button. The TV screen hissed, a sound like static mixed with a rushing wind. The room around them began to warp and distort. Their bodies started to flicker, then pixelate, breaking down into tiny squares of light. "What's happening?" Mason shouted, his voice echoing weirdly as he grabbed for his dad's arm. The living room stretched, twisted, and bent like taffy. And then, with a deafening whoosh, they were sucked straight through the screen, tumbling through a vortex of color and light. They landed hard on a glowing, transparent platform, floating in an endless, star-dusted darkness. Before they could even get their bearings, a thick mist spiraled upward from the floor, coalescing into the shape of a tall, imposing man in a long midnight blue cape. Stars shimmered and danced across the fabric, as if the entire night sky lived within its folds. "I am the puzzle master," his voice boomed, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You have been chosen." "Chosen for what?" Mike asked, his voice steady as he stepped protectively in front of his sons. "To escape," the puzzle master replied, a crooked, knowing smile spreading across his face. "You must complete 24 levels of puzzles and games within 24 hours. Succeed, and you return home. Fail, and you remain here. Forever!" Swade gulped, his excitement suddenly replaced by a knot of fear. Mason clenched his fists, his jaw set in determination. Mike took a deep breath and nodded slowly, a calm resolve settling over him. "All right, boys," he said, his voice a firm anchor in the void. "We stick together. We communicate. We help each other. We can do this." The puzzle master swept his cape dramatically. Above him, a giant spectral countdown clock flickered into existence, its red numbers glowing ominously. 24 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. "Tick-tock," the puzzle master whispered, his voice a chilling breeze. Your game starts now. Mike, Mason, and Swade looked at one another, a silent promise passing between them. Then, in perfect unison, they said, "We can do this," and together they stepped forward into Level 1. Level 1, the Riddle Door. Their first challenge was a giant stone door that rumbled to life, its surface swirling as a voice asked riddles that changed with every wrong answer. Mason's quick mind solved most of them, but one stumped them until Swade, thinking hard, suddenly shouted the answer to the hardest one. "What belongs to you, but others use it more?" "The answer is my name," Swade yelled, and the door roared open for them. Level 2, the Floating Bridge. Next, a floating bridge of puzzle tiles appeared over a chasm. The tiles constantly rearranged themselves. Mike, with his steady eye, guided the boys, pointing out the correct pattern to step on, forming the shape of a kiwi bird, a symbol of home. Level 3, the Forest of Echoes. They entered a forest of echoes where every sound they made repeated 3 times, disorienting them and leading them in circles. The air was thick with the confusing cacophony of their own footsteps. It was Mason who realized the only way forward was silence. They held their breath and tiptoed, and the path ahead cleared. Level 4, the Laughing Maze. Then came the Laughing Maze, a terrifying labyrinth of shifting walls where creepy, disembodied laughter echoed from all sides. Swade, ever the observer, noticed the walls moved whenever they made a sound. So, taking a deep breath, the 3 of them started laughing like maniacs, their forced hysterics opening the exit. Level 5, the Orb Balance Game. They faced the Orb Balance Game, where they had to balance glowing, slippery orbs on tilting platforms. Mike's steady hands and calm demeanor were key, as he carefully guided the boys in keeping the orbs from rolling into the abyss. Level 6, the Shadow Beast. Level 6 was terrifying. A giant, amorphous shadow beast hunted them through a dark landscape. They discovered that the only thing that kept it at bay was light, and they had to huddle together, their combined small auras creating a safe zone. Mason held Swade's hand tightly the entire time, their small circle of light a beacon against the monstrous darkness. Level 7, the Color Chamber. Then a chamber where everything was stark black and white. Coloured tiles on the floor had to be stepped on in the correct sequence, bringing vibrant colour back into the world piece by piece. Level 8, the Dance Platform. They reached a wild dance platform, a fun break where the floor lit up in complex patterns they had to copy. Mike surprised the boys with some old school dance moves they never knew he had, and they all laughed as they danced their way through. Level 9, the Whisper Puzzle. A whisper puzzle followed, with crucial clues whispered from different directions at once. Swade's sharp hearing was their salvation, as he isolated the correct whispers from the confusing noise. Level 10, the River Run. They raced down a glowing digital river on leaf-shaped boats, dodging pixelated crocodiles and working together to steer through treacherous currents. Level 11, the Coded Sky. Then came the Coded Sky, where constellations rearranged themselves into numbers. Mason's knack for patterns allowed him to solve the code and unlock the next level. Level 12, the Mirror Room. They found themselves in a mirror room where their own reflections moved independently, trying to mislead them. Mike noticed the real reflections blinked just a fraction slower, allowing them to find the true path. Level 13, the Tower of Timers. The Tower of Timers was a frantic rush. Dozens of countdown clocks ticked wildly, and they had to deactivate them in a specific order. Swade's quick, nimble fingers flew over the switches, silencing the clocks just in time. Level 14, the Animal Guardians. Stone animal guardians blocked their path, each carved with intricate designs. Mason, who had been learning about his heritage, identified their Maori symbolism and spoke their traditional names, causing the statues to respectfully move aside. Level 15, the Memory Wall. They faced a giant memory wall that flashed complex sequences of light and sound. They had to recall them perfectly. Working together, whispering the sequence to each other, they achieved a perfect score. Level 16, the wind tunnel. A powerful wind tunnel nearly blew them away, its gusts so strong they had to link arms and walk in perfect sync, leaning into the wind as one. Level 17, the hidden door. Mike then found a hidden door by noticing a patch on a stone wall that was slightly warmer to the touch. That was a lucky, clever dad move. Level 18, the midnight train. They boarded a ghostly midnight train, a truly scary level with flickering lights and strange, echoing sounds. The key was staying calm, and together they solved the puzzle of the train's timetable. Level 19, the vines of grip. They battled through the vines of grip. These were living, thorny plants that tried to grab them. Only through teamwork, cutting, pulling, and timing their jumps did they get through. Level 20, the floating islands. They leaped across floating islands that crumbled after a few seconds, with Mason quickly mapping the only safe route across the void. Level 21, the music lock. A music lock required them to hum a tune shown in glowing notes. Their combined, harmonized voices opened the door. Level 22, the quiz of truth. The quiz of truth was a test of character. Lying made the floor beneath them crack. They had to answer every question with complete honesty. Even when it meant admitting embarrassing truths about each other, it was a test of strengthening their bond. Level 23, the giant puzzle sphere. Level 23 was a giant puzzle sphere made of huge, rotating rings. It took Mike's strength to turn the heavy rings, Mason's logic to understand the pattern, and Swade's sharp eye for detail to spot the tiny alignments needed. It was a perfect combination of their individual strengths. Level 24, the final puzzle, the clock room. Finally, they reached level 24, the clock room. The final chamber was circular, filled with 24 giant, floating gears of different sizes and colors. In the center was a massive, locked hourglass, the sand draining quickly. The clock above them showed only 30 minutes left. "All right," Mike said, breathing hard but his voice resolute. "We've got this." But the gears shifted constantly, their movements making no sense. They tried aligning them by size, but it was wrong. By color, wrong. By sound, wrong again. Minutes ticked by relentlessly. Sweat dripped down their faces. Frustration mounted. With only 1 minute left on the clock, the mood was desperate. "We're not gonna make it," Mason said, his voice cracking. "Think, boys," Mike urged, his eyes scanning the chaos. "What are we missing? What's the pattern?" Then Swade froze. His sparkling brown eyes went wide. "Wait, guys, I know what it is. It's the numbers," he shouted, his voice echoing in the chamber. "Each gear has tiny numbers engraved on it. Their time positions. They need to match a clock face." He sprinted around the room, yelling out positions. "That one's 12. The blue one goes at 3. Mike and Mason leaped into action, grabbing the massive gears and twisting them into place with renewed energy. 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 seconds. Almost there, Swade yelled, pointing to the last gear. With a final desperate heave, Mike slammed the final gear into alignment. A deep, resounding click echoed through the room. The giant hourglass in the center burst with a brilliant golden light. The puzzle master reappeared, clapping slowly, a smile of genuine admiration on his face. "Well done," he said. "All 24 levels complete, and with mere seconds to spare." He gave them a respectful nod. "You are free to return home." A swirl of blinding light engulfed them. They landed back on their couch with a soft thud, the TV screen blank and silent. The game cartridge sat on the coffee table, now a dull, lifeless grey. For a moment, the three of them just sat there, breathing in the familiar air of their living room, the scent of home. Mike wrapped his arms around his sons, pulling them into a tight hug. "You boys," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You were so amazing." Mason grinned, a look of tired triumph on his face. Swade puffed out his chest proudly. "Can we tell Mum?" he asked. Mike laughed, a warm, deep sound. "I don't think she'd believe a single word," said Mike. Together, still buzzing with adrenaline from the impossible adventure, they looked at the dead game. Mason nudged it with his toe. I wonder if it'll ever turn back on Dad. Mike shook his head, a fond smile on his face. It doesn't matter, boys. We beat that game, he said proudly. Swade looked up at his dad, his cheeky smile softening. Yeah, he said softly, leaning into the hug. We beat it together. Now that is the end of the story. The game of 24 waits to find its next unsuspecting victims to find and purchase it. And it will probably end up in another old antique store, waiting for players to play.